Citizens, 1 year ago I described the starting 1980s international views in mostly black colors. The détente development had stopped, and the great powers' relations had in half a year after the Vienna summit become more tense. Unfortunately, neither the ended year's development gives a reason for a brighter estimate. The international situation is characterized by a general uncertainty and worry about tomorrow. The mutual suspicion and furtiveness between the great powers seem to continue while the arms race advances at an accelerating pace. Such a situation is not, of course, any one and unprecedented one. Today it is, however, made serious by the weapon technical development, whose proportions the modern human seems to have difficulty fully understanding. Although we have avoided a great war for 3.5 decades, the great power relations have even several times escalated, and the international tension has burst into over 100 regional conflicts. For example, in the last decade, there was not a single day when people would not have waged a war in some part of the world. When the theaters of war have mostly been areas distant from Finland, it has been easy for us to take a self-satisfied bystander's attitude and to imagine that we are safe. I fear that lulling ourselves into such thinking can be a bad kind of self-deception. For example, the recent months' crises in the Middle East are such in nature that they extend their influence all over the world. In the First World War died over 5 million people. The Second World War, which began only 2 decades later, claimed 10 times as many human victims. In the regional conflicts which have occurred after that have died an almost equal number of people, according to some estimates. One can only imagine what a world war would mean at this moment, even if nuclear weapons were not used. Nuclear weapons mean, however, by their very existence, a threat to the entire humanity. In the world's weapon storage spaces, there are currently about over 60,000 atomic weapons, whose destructive power and hitting accuracy have constantly increased. Their joint explosive power matches about 4,000 kilograms of a common explosive for every inhabitant of the globe. We must also remember the fact that with technical and industrial development increases also the number of the states, which would practically have a possibility to produce nuclear weapons themselves. Now there are only 5 actual nuclear weapon states. The increase of their number has, for the time being, been limited by the nuclear blocking treaty made in 1968. The updating and further strengthening of this treaty system has caused, however, growing difficulties. A worrisome sign of the time is that a few months ago, the second verification conference of the nuclear blocking treaty, which was held in Geneva, ended without an agreement of the final protocol, or on the final protocol. Discussion of the nuclear war's dangers has become more frequent during the past year, especially in Europe. Even in a limited form, such a war would cause immeasurable destruction exactly in our continent. Because of this, also interest in nuclear-free zones has been revitalized. Also in the Nordic countries, people have begun to examine these questions from a different viewpoint, which we Finns have noted with interest. 1 year ago, I appealed strongly for the continuation of détente in Europe. In this respect, my position is still unchanged. All chances for solidification of cooperation and a lasting decrease of the danger of war should be utilized. This is the aim of Finland's initiative for the drafting of Europe's disarmament program. which we have proposed to be handled in the Conference on Security and Cooperation in Europe's second follow-up meeting in Madrid. The same effect would be produced also by the expansions of those confidence-building measures which we have proposed together with the other neutral and non-aligned countries. In Madrid, in our opinion, people should take the first steps towards the assembling of European Disarmament Conference, despite the great powers' disagreement. Dear listeners, I have above presented many gloomy-looking views on the times phenomena. My purpose is not, however, to scare anyone. I just want to awaken each one of us to notice how necessary are détente and a limitation of the arms race. The responsibility for peace is extended also to the individuals. I know that there are in our country several civic organizations and also numerous private persons who have given an important contribution for the good of peace and international consensus. Last summer, I could notice with pleasure that in a short time over 1 million names were collected into the Nordic Women's Peace Address. The appeal was simple and clear. In it was expressed a protest against war and armament in a way that all people understand. I hope that precisely women will influence, even more than currently, the goal of making even more than now human warmth and mutual esteem parts of our daily toil. In this way, we could surely reduce the tendency towards violence and its admiration, which is expressed in different ways in our society. Citizens, as the new year again starts, it is pleasant to notice that Finland's position in the world is good and stable. Despite the international uncertainty, we are not forced to guess our own place. Our relations with the other countries are sound. During the visit to the Soviet Union, which I paid quite recently, I could clearly observe how greatly our foreign policy is respected there, and how solid our mutual trust is. Our economic cooperation proceeds with long leaps for the benefit of both nations. We Finns must with joint forces work for the securing of our international position also in the future. This guarantees for us requirements also for our society's internal development, so that it will be for each citizen an even better place to live and dwell than now. We have a good country for which it is worthwhile to strive. I thank each citizen for the contribution that he or she has made during the ended year for the common good, and I wish for all of you luck and success and peace during the year that has begun.